बिहार जनवल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी राधा वृंदावन बिहारी श्री राधे जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी राधा वृंदावन बिहारी श्री राधे जय राधे जय राधे जय राधे जय श्री राधे जय राधे जय राधे जय राधे जय श्री राधे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा लीलानंद प्रभु
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, दंडवत
प्रणाम प्रभु। हरे कृष्णा अनिला माता जी। हरे कृष्णा
प्रभु जी, दंडवत
प्रणाम।
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम।
We'll now begin. Now I recite in our prayers. Mangalachara. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurum Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroh Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Humble obeisances to all the senior devotees and Vaishnavas who have assembled today. We are now getting closer and closer to Janmashtami, which is just a few weeks away. But in that lead up also, we have pretty much a very packed spiritual weeks that lead up to Janmashtami. Jhulan Yatra's celebrations will be starting. Then we'll have Balram Jayanti. Then Janmashtami, then Radhashtami. So it's one of the most auspicious times of the year for us. And also the time of the year wherein we can really actually get into that mood. Also, it's not that we need to do it only this time of the year, but we should definitely try to do it all the time. But this time of the year, it's all the more easier for us because with all that is happening around us, especially in the devotee association. So the Bhagavatam, and I was listening to this lecture by His Holiness Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Maharaj, and he says about the language in which the Bhagavatam is spoken. And he says the Bhasha is called Samadhi Bhasha. And that's so this is something which it's spoken at a much more very high level. So when, for example, Vyasadeva is writing this, or when Shukadev Goswami is narrating this Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, he's actually experiencing it. He is seeing it. And that is what we see in the 10th canto, which is actually the ultimate. We come to the Ashraya, which is the shelter of that in the 10th canto. So and not only just the 10th canto, whatever Shukadev Goswami narrates to Parikshit Maharaj is experience. It's in that Samadhi Bhasha. So he's actually having Anubhav. So right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it is said that Shukadeva Goswami is narrating this out of his experience, out of Anubhav. And we also need to strive to get to that level. I myself am very, very far away from it. And I'm maybe not even fit to preach that, but that is the goal that we need to get to, is that we need to experience the Bhagavatam. And that's where, to prepare us for that experience, that beautiful experience, that extremely sweet experience in the 10th canto, we go through the first 9 cantos. That's the entire purpose of those 9 cantos, is to ultimately get to the 10th canto and experience. And hopefully by the time we reach the 10th canto, the goal is some of our anarthas, if not all at least, are removed and taken away. And today we are going to get into another of Krishna's demon killing pastimes. So if you remember, or maybe you have read it also, that the 6 core anarthas that are there, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, these are represented by the demons or by the individuals that Krishna actually liberates. So if you look at the first 6 Leelas that happen in Vrindavan, first starting with Putana, she's a witch, and she represents the pseudo-guru or a pretender. You know, she comes in as a lady, a beautiful mother who offers, a nurse who offers the poisoned milk, right? And she disguises that under material affection, right? And this is exactly what the pseudo guru does, and whom we should be aware of or beware of, right? Especially when we are seeking shelter. Now, the next demon that we covered in the earlier class was Shakatasur. That was the cart demon, right? And here, this is about carrying this heavy load of old and new bad habits, being lazy, uh, you know, uh, and all of you have woken up early in the morning, completed your morning rounds, your sadhana, you're sitting here listening to Bhagavatam. And this is what Prabhupada wanted us to do, so that we don't get stuck under this demon of Shakatasur, that anartha that is there. So there's this the old habits are very die hard, they say, and that is what it is, right? So sometimes we want to sleep that extra time in the bed. And today we are going to be seeing the pastime of Trinavarta, who is the whirlwind demon. And he's carrying a huge load also. But this is what is called false pride. I think this is so dangerous, Prabhujis and Matajis. I often get stuck in this false pride without knowing also, right? And Lilananda Prabhu, in many of his lectures, he uses that famous analogy of the hood of the snake that rises up, right? And it's waiting for that just one chance wherein that hood of the false snake, that pride can stand up. And then we stand on that pride of our dry logic, our material scholarship, what we have learned in the material world, right? And then we actually start, maybe in a way also, conveying something which is very bogus or does not exist. We have to be extremely careful about that. So as I had said, we had two demons who already, came to Brajamandal. They came and they have already, you saw Putana in the shape of the beautiful woman. She offered Krishna her milk, but Krishna drank her life air along with that poison. And she fell dead across 12 miles of Raja. And then we saw Shakatasur. So Shakatasur was the demon who came as the form of the cart. And Krishna, all he had to do was just slightly kick with his small baby legs. He kicked the cart and it was broken down into pieces. Now, Kamsa is sitting in Mathura, is not stupid also, right? He's had two failures, okay? And he's definitely not going to give up. And he's definitely going to escalate now his attempt also. So today, Shukadeva Goswami is going to tell Parikshit Maharaj about the third attempt. So as I was reading about this pastime and about Kamsa's determination, actually, and I was kind of reflecting on it, I was reminded of our chartered accountancy days, right? So third attempt, second attempt, and first attempt are usually synonymous with CA exams. In the CA exams, we can pass eventually. But when it comes for the demons to win over Krishna, it is impossible. So no matter how many attempts they take, they'll never pass that test.
Good one, Prabhu.
So, and so let's think about it also in this way. Putana came disguised as a person first. Shakatasur came disguised as a thing. Now Trinavarta is coming disguised as weather, as a whirlwind, right? So some of you who stay in the coastal towns or who have brought up in the coastal Andhra, I know you all see a lot of tornadoes and cyclones and whirlwinds and all that, right? And they can be pretty violent when they happen, right? Because they can completely cover the sky, they throw up a lot of dust, right? And we don't know inside it what it is there, right? But in this particular whirlwind, inside that whirlwind is Trinavarta. And he's carrying a very demoniac sinister plan to carry that little child up so high into the air that there is no chance for survival for that child. That is his vision. He's got a vision. And this Leela also has a very interesting thing that happens, that if you look at it at the beginning of the Leela and at the end of the Leela, both the times actually something very significant happens. But there are two parts to this Leela. One is, of course, the killing of the demon. And at the end, we see Mother Yashoda will be nursing Krishna, will be feeding him milk. And then she will open his mouth, or rather, Krishna will open his mouth in yawning. And she will see the entire universe actually manifest in that. So, and if you, one way, if you look at it, both the events, right, the whirlwind coming and this event wherein mother is looking into Krishna's mouth are almost about the same thing, right? And in both those cases, we see that our eyes, right, are, in one case, the eyes are blinded, and in the other case, the eyes are closed on purpose. So this is the flow of this entire Leela from start to finish. And just before we go into verse number 19, just to set the scene, Shukadeva Goswami has already set the scene, but just little time we can spend is that, one day actually Krishna is now sitting on Mother Yashoda's lap, right? And, she's playing with him, she's patting with him, she's throwing up as all mothers do, etc. And without warning, he becomes heavier than a mountain peak. And Prabhupada's purport actually tells us exactly why. It was because Krishna was aware that Trinavarta is coming. He did not want to suffer. He did not want his mother to suffer any difficulty from the demon. Therefore, he assumed the heaviness of the entire universe. Okay, so let's start now with verse number 19. Bhumau nidhayatam gopi vismita bharapapidita Mahapurusham adhya adadhyau jagatam asakarmasu. Feeling the child to be as heavy as the entire universe and therefore being anxious, thinking that perhaps the child was being attacked by some other ghost or demon, the astonished mother Yashoda put the child down on the ground and began to think of Lord Narayana. Foreseeing disturbances, she called the Brahmanas to counteract. She called the Brahmanas to counteract this heaviness, and then she engaged in other household affairs. Now, let's just reflect upon this. This is irony, right? In one sentence, you see that first Yashoda is playing with the child, and then suddenly she's unable to bear the weight of the child in her own arms. She sets him down, and she's actually turning for help to whom? To Narayana. So in a way, she's actually praying to the same person she's holding without knowing it. And our acharyas have said, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said that in his own, he says that, Yashoda Mata is actually looking up to the Lord and saying, you have given us this son, you must protect him. That's the innocence that is there. So why does, the Lord do this? Why does Krishna do this? So Jiva Goswami cites Sridhar Swami actually. And he says, Krishna made himself heavy so that Yashoda would put him down. Thus he avoided giving her injury. So Krishna is omniscient. He knows everything that has happened, but not only that, he knows everything that is going to happen, everything that is happening anywhere. So he knows exactly what is approaching Vrachamandal at this moment. So Trinavarta is about to descend as this kind of a hurricane, whirlwind, at the very same spot where the mother and child are sitting. And if Krishna is still cradled in Mother Yashoda's arms when Trinavarta strikes, she is standing directly in the path of the demon who has no interest in sparing her. So here, Krishna is actually protecting his devotee by sending her away. So first, keep this in mind, because we'll come back to this point at the end of the Leela also. So Krishna's weight was never an accident. It is something that he designed. And he will use it again also with Trinavarta when he takes him up in a much more dramatic way. So Yashoda has no idea that the demon is coming, and Krishna has moved her out of the demon's path also. And she's bewildered and she's praying actually to him only for his own protection. So this is what protection from Krishna actually looks like. So Krishna does not rescue us after the disaster. A small, there might be some inconvenience that we might experience. And in our lives, we experience many inconveniences. We lose jobs. Sometimes we are unemployed, or sometimes something happens in to us from a health perspective. Something happens in our family, right? And you might have heard this phrase, it's always part of a larger plan, right? So when we experience those small inconvenience, sometimes God is protecting us from the bigger disaster. We need to keep that in mind, right? And many a times it can save our life also. And we don't know, actually, the only challenge is when these challenges are happening, we don't know that actually somebody is protecting us, somebody is saving us. Let's move to the next verse. Daityo namna trinavartah kamsabhritya pranoditah chakravata swarupena jaharasinam arbakam. While the child was sitting on the ground, a demon named Trinavarta, who was a servant of Kamsa's, came there as a whirlwind at Kamsa's instigation and very easily carried the child away into the air. Right? So we now know that the demon has a name, that is Trinavarta. But also, very interestingly, now Krishna has been very easily carried away into the air. Someone who was heavier than the universe now suddenly becomes lighter than the feather. So Jiva Goswami actually, in his commentary to this verse, he mentions Kamsa's escalating fear here. So the fear that he sent Putana and she died. He panicked and sent Shakatasur, who didn't even bother with the form at all, and he also died. Kamsa was greatly frightened, and this time he sent something with form and without form. So demon who can be a whirlwind and a person at once. And Prabhupada says that when Trinavarta came, Krishna became lighter than the grass. So the demon could lift him with ease. He could lift him up easily and fly with him. So the same weight that protected Yashoda, few seconds later, right? Now Krishna has made himself light to be taken up to take care of the demon. So now as we move on, now I'll just quickly actually narrate through verse 21 to 23, because also here we see what this storm that is happening, right, does to the eyes of the Brajavasis. Right? So this is an important point, Prabhuji and Mataji, is essentially what the storm is doing to the eyes of the Brajavasis. So the whirlwind actually covers, as it is mentioned, the whole tract of Gokul Mandal. Right? So whole Gokula is covered in dust. Said, Mushnamsa Chakumshi, Chakshumsi. That is, the verse says outright, it steals the power of the vision. So the vision power is taken away. There's so much dust. So, and sometimes we have experienced, we I've seen a sandstorm, and sometimes you cannot even see a small distance ahead. It's so bad. We have experienced fog. I'm sure many of you have experienced fog, driving in the fog, wherein we are not even able to see 1 feet ahead, early mornings. So, and that is what is happening here. Because of this whirlwind storm, the Vrajavasis are not even able to see what is next to them. So, Sanatan Goswami, in his commentary, he suggests there is a second motive. Because when the storm comes, there's a huge noise. It's a roar. and there's darkness. Both are coming together. So picture this, visualize this. There's a big storm, a lot of noise, complete darkness. And Sanatana Goswami says that he feared that the Trinavarta feared that Krishna would cry and he would make loud noises. That's why he made the sound of the wind so loud that no one could hear the child cry. And the blindness that is there, right? Right? This also has a reason. So there's this dust that is rising, right? It's rising from the ground. It's huge. It's like a big tornado, right? And as I said, anybody who has lived on the coastal towns must have experienced something similar. But this was Brajamandal, and in Brajamandal, something like this has never happened, right? In Gokul, actually, nobody needed a weather report also because storms simply did not happen there, right? But it arrived. So, but in a devotee's life, also, I think what we need to keep in mind is that nothing arrives in a devotee's life that Krishna has not already seen coming. I think that is what is most important. Krishna is the ultimate planner, right? So if something is happening in our lives, it's already been envisioned by him for us. Keep that in mind, please. So the entire pasturing ground actually goes completely dark, and Mother Yashoda is standing exactly where she had placed her son. She cannot find him there anymore. Because the entire world around her has gone dark now. So Jiva Goswami actually says, he compares this weather to a mirror. He says the place was covered by dust and consequent darkness. It's comparable to the yogi's heart covered by rajas and tamas. So the material modes of passion and ignorance. So when our heart is pure, he writes, we can see the Lord. But when our heart gets covered by these two modes of rajas and tamas, so even if the Lord is sitting next to us, we will not be able to see him. He is literally there. We will not be able to see him. And I can give you my own personal example. We have an altar at home now. We have invited lordships home. Right in front in our drawing room. So anytime I walk in and out of the house, there is actually no way I can avoid seeing them. And when I was reading this commentary, I was reflecting on it. I was asking myself that actually when I'm walking out many times, because I'm so caught up in that mode of rajas, either work or something, I might be looking straight into the altar. I'm actually not seeing the deities there. So let us remind ourselves also constantly that when we are getting covered by this rajas and tamas, Prabhujis and Matajis, even though the Bhagavan will be sitting right next to us, we will not be able to see him. He will not allow us to experience him. So it is actually here, what is happening is not Mother Yashoda and the entire other Brijavasis, they are being kind of blinded. They're not able to see because of the demon's weather. Jiva Goswami here is suggesting that this is actually a true picture, a true reflection of what covers our vision of Krishna and our perception. Now let's continue. I'll move to verse 24. Iti karapavana chakrapamshu varshe sutapada vimabala vilakshya mata ati karunam anusmarantya shochat bhuvi patitamrita vatsaka yatha gau. Because of the dust storm stirred up by the strong whirlwind, Mother Yashoda could find no trace of her son, nor could she understand why. Thus she fell down on the ground like a cow who has lost her calf and began to lament very pitifully. So it's important to kind of understand the comparison here. So the comparison is compared to a cow who has lost her calf, right? And Jiva Goswami says that this lamentation of the mother was strong enough to even break stones and wood. It was so strong. And the cow and the calf image is what Shukadeva Goswami is giving us, because that's kind of a very nearest. I've not experienced it personally. And maybe at the end of the lecture, Lilananda Prabhu can share, because he has been very closely rendering service in the Goshala. The cow, when they lose their calf, and I've heard it, it's one of the most kind of lamentations when even a stone will get moved by that lamentation, right? That's the kind of motherly love that was there, right? So we also, let's pause for a moment, right? In this entire drama of that storm that is happening, when the demon is coming, the demon is going to attack. Typically, there is always collateral damage when that happens, right? Even in like we are seeing a war that is happening in the Middle East, and we see that as somebody is, maybe they are saying, I'm not saying that they are justified to do what they're doing by sending out arms. But some one side says that they're trying to attack a terrorist. But in that process of attacking a terrorist, there are many other innocent people who are also losing their lives. That's the collateral damage. And as I had mentioned earlier, if Krishna was still in his mother's arms and Trinavarta would have struck in that whirlwind, anything else could have also happened. So Krishna set aside, or Krishna rather became heavy, so that all his devotees were fully protected. But let's keep in mind that Mother Yashoda's body was protected. The devotee's heart was still allowed to experience that separation. And that's why she falls to the ground in that grief that only a mother can know. So Krishna arranged that the physical danger was taken away, but let that emotional danger go through completely untouched. And that is a choice. So we continue to go now. We'll move now to verse 25. I'll just narrate what happens now. So the wind dies down. Trinavarta has already taken Krishna. And then all the gopis, hearing Yashoda's cries, they come running. And they find that Krishna is not there. They also break into tears. And the verse says actually that the eyes are full of tears. And Prabhupada's purport to this verse, it's a very short one, but it's very simple and devastating actually. It says that when Krishna was there, they were happy. And Krishna was not there, they were unhappy. The whole society of Raja runs on this one platform, which is the presence of Krishna. Right? And if you actually, and I'm taking this, I don't know whether I can take this liberty to say this, but when we are experiencing either listening to Krishna Kartha or sharing this story with someone else, we are in another world. So, right, we are completely forgotten about all our other material miseries, if I may put it that way. And I'll just share a little bit of what my spiritual master has said. I was listening to his lecture, and he speaks about desire, right? And this desire word actually connects very strongly with the Rajavasis actually, that laulyam that they have, which is for Krishna, for Krishna's happiness, not for their material happiness, right? So when Krishna is there, when they are able to serve him, when they are seeing Krishna smiling, they are happy, in a happy state of mind. And when they are not able to do that, when they are not able to serve their dear Krishna, then they are not in that state. Similarly, what are our desires? Are our desires, sorry, Hare Krishna, are our desires material, or are our desires actually trying to please Krishna? We need to remind ourselves of that, because that desire is what will show who we truly are. We need to build that desire, that strong desire for Krishna. So, meanwhile, and far above, somewhere above our atmosphere, definitely. I don't remember exactly, but in one of the lectures I heard, it was a kind of in the above the atmosphere level. I think they have gone up to that height, and that is where the real now contest is happening. Actually, there is no contest, but Krishna also sometimes makes it a little bit of a contest. Let's read the next verse, 26. Trinavarta Shantarayo Bhatya Rupa Dharo Haran Krishnam na bhogato gantum Nashaknod Bhuri Bharabhrit. Having assumed the form of a forceful whirlwind, the demon Trinavarta took Krishna very high into the sky. And when Krishna became heavier than the demon had to stop his force and could go no further. So here we are coming back to what we started in that first verse of this Leela, particular verse, right? We spoke about Krishna's weight. So in this purport, Prabhupada says, it is a competition in yogic power. So a demon can do all sorts of things, right? And we also see that we see these bogus sadhus and bogus gurus also through mystic practice. They can acquire different siddhis, right? Or they can acquire some fragments of one siddhi. This is called lagima, like a power to become light, or mahima, which is the power to become heavy or great also. But a fragment of that power, let's remember that that can never be the source. It's not equal to the source. So we may see a spark, but the spark is never equal to that fire. The spark is the spark, and the fire is the fire. Beta beta hota hai, baap baap hota hai. So now, and Trinavarta, what he has acquired, this mystic power, it's a stolen mysticism, because eventually that spark didn't come out of nothing. It came from that fire, right? So, and there is no contest here, right? Between the spark and the fire, we know who will win. So Prabhupada writes, he says, no one can compete with Krishna, right? For a few moments, it seems like there is a competition because Trinavarta is carrying Krishna and going. But that is exactly that illusion that Krishna wants to play out, right? And then once it's time, he says, okay, time is now enough. Now let's get into the reality now. Right? And so Krishna was very heavy. He was put down. He became light. Trinavarta was lifting him. And then suddenly he became unbearably heavy again. So that he could neither be easily held on to, was very, very difficult to hold on to, right? And he wanted to actually get rid of him, the child. But now Krishna was actually going to be catching hold of his neck. So this is what is happening. And as I said, Prabhupada's purport calls this a competition in mystic power. right? And if you remember, he says that there is really no contest. So let's now continue to move on. Before that, one important point that Prabhupada also talks about is these bogus gurus and the sadhus, right? They sometimes acquire some mystic power and they proclaim, or sometimes foolish people regard them as God because they are lacking in that knowledge of Krishna, right? So it's pretty similar out here. In verse 27, we see that, now Trinavarta is now terrified. He's terrified by the weight and thinking that now he's carrying a mountain or an iron lump. That's how it is described. He tries to throw Krishna off, but he can't because Krishna has now caught him by the throat. So, and Jiva Goswami in his commentary says that Krishna, actually seemed afraid of falling from that height, and therefore he clung on to Hiranavarta's neck. So he was actually seeing a very sweet pastime happening there, and he's saying that Krishna is still playing. Even now, the part of an ordinary frightened baby, when he's catching the neck of Trinavarta, he's playing the part of an ordinary frightened baby, clutching whoever he's holding on to. Right? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says that this is Leela. This is the Leela. It's a performance of, the childhood fear laid over an act of total control. And that is Krishna Leela. That is happening or playing out here. So now again, you just contrast this scene to what happened right at the beginning when that whirlwind came. So when the whirlwind came, there were two things that I mentioned happened, right? There was a loud noise and it created blindness, right? So there's a deafening roar to cover the sound of the crying child so that no one in Vraja could hear and come running to protect the child. Now, that same demon who used the sound, that same demon is reduced to no sound, zero sound, completely choked. So, this is also something that, we need to keep in mind how the Lord has actually played this out. And let's move on now. In verse number 28, let's just read what's happening there. So with Krishna grasping him by the throat, Trinavarta choked, unable to make even a sound, his eyes popping out. The demon lost his life and fell, along with the little boy, down to the ground of Raja. Now, if you go back to the pastime of Putana dying, when Putana died, she fell with a loud wail, which kind of woke up almost everybody in Vraja, and she fell across 12 miles, frightening the people of Vraja with her loud wailing, but also when the way she had fallen. Now, Trinavarta, it's a complete opposite. He dies without a sound. So, two demons, two deaths, but Krishna chooses each time exactly how loud that ending will be of this each demon. And more interestingly, actually, the demon actually falls. When you see in verse 29, the demon body falls from the sky onto a stone slab, the limbs scattering. Right? So, a very precise fall. So, in fact, Gauranga Darshan Prabhu's grace, Gauranga Darshan Prabhu uses this example and he narrates this pastime. So, when Trinavarta Airlines took off, right, the objective was very simple, to eliminate Krishna. Now, Trinavarta Airlines somehow had a failure and it crash landed. Now, how many times have we seen when an airline crash lands, it crash lands exactly at the same spot? Now, in the case of Trinavarta Airlines, Krishna made that happen. So the demon's body actually fell from the sky onto the stone slab a small stab of stone, it has fallen down. And the limbs were scattered. And Shukadeva Goswami compares this to the demon Tripurasura and says that it was like the Tripurasura was pierced and destroyed by the arrow of Lord Shiva. So the Acharya says, Jiva Goswami says that Krishna arranged for the body to fall on a bare stone patch near the gopis, not in the pastures where the cows walk, and not out of the sight of the gopis, because he wanted them to see it quickly. That is what Jiva Goswami says. Because he wanted to extinguish their grief in those few moments when Trinavarta has taken Krishna and gone up into the sky. And we had read that verse wherein Yashoda Ma comes, she gives that loud wail and she falls down in grief. And that grief was compared, that lamentation was compared to the separation of a calf from the cow mother, from Gomata. So Jiva Goswami is saying Krishna was so concerned for his devotees, he wanted to extinguish their grief quickly. So that's why he did not make the dead body of the demon fall far away. All right there next to them on a small slab of stone, without having any impact on them, so that their lamentation would go away immediately. They were lamenting intensely at that point of time, and he wanted that grief to be taken away also quickly. So this was also an act of mercy of Krishna, that the demon landed at the same spot. And Jiva Goswami, of course, draws the contrast with Putana. He says that when Putana fell, she crushed trees under her enormous body across lots of miles of Braja, right? But in this case, the demon fell onto a single bare slab of stone, disturbing nothing else. So we saw two different demons' deaths, how the sound that was there, how we orchestrated that, but two deaths where they fell, but two deaths, complete footprint of the demons were controlled by Krishna. And on the demon's chest, Krishna was sitting there, he was playing, and Prabhupada in his purport into the verse 30, he says that Prabhupada himself seems to be quite playful there. He says, the demon's chest was sufficiently broad to play on. The baby was happy in all respects. He says the demon's chest was sufficiently broad to play on, and the baby was happy in all respects. So the child who was carried into the sky to be killed is found a few seconds later, after the demon's death, in a mood of total contentment, completely content. Right? So, and Prabhupada says that as if nothing had happened to him. But actually, in the deeper sense, nothing actually had happened, right? Nothing can happen to Krishna. That is, he says, Prabhupada says, this is Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Vigraha. So, it's a form that is entirely made of transcendental bliss. So there is no way actually any danger can reach it. So immediately after that, the gopis snatch him, take him up first, and they are very overjoyed, completely overjoyed than anyone else present, because of their deep affection for Krishna. And because they had reached the spot first, this is what Jiva Goswami says. So they reached that spot first, so they were closer there, and they saw Krishna, and they were completely overjoyed. And Nanda Baba and all the cowherd men, they were also overjoyed, as if Krishna was born again. That brings us to a very, very important verse, that is verse 31. Aho batatya adbhutamesha rakshasa balo nivrittim gamito abhyagat punah himsrasva papena vihimsita khala sadhu samatvena bhayad vimuchyate. It is most astonishing. Please listen to this translation attentively. It is most astonishing that although this innocent child was taken away by the Rakshasa to be eaten, he has returned without having been killed or even injured. Because this demon was envious, cruel, and sinful. He has been killed for his own sinful activities. This is the law of nature. An innocent devotee is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and a sinful person is always vanquished for his sinful life. Let's remember this. Let's keep that faith that Krishna is always protecting us. In the interim, we might be believing, or we might believe that we are going through something unfortunate, but Krishna is saving us from a bigger disaster. And eventually, he will save us from all material disasters, all material life can offer actually. This verse is spoken by the ordinary cowherd folk. Nanda Maharaj, Gopas, Gopis, they're all standing in a circle around Trinavarta. He's lying dead there. And there's a baby that is laughing. Right? And what we saw was the violent whirlwind was destroyed by its own violence. And the innocent one was untouched because he is innocent, not because he fought harder. So Prabhupada, he goes to Bhagavad Gita 9.30. Api chet suduracharo bhajate mamananya bhag sadhur eva samantavya samyak vyavasito hi saha. Says that even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. That is 9.30. So anyone fully devoted to Krishna, Prabhupada says, is a sadhu. And reminds us that Nanda and the gopis, they actually had no idea in that moment that they were praising the Supreme Personality of Godhead themselves. Right? Who was sitting in front of them. But for them, they were so innocent. They only knew that they had the child back. Right? So, we move to now what happens next. We see Nanda is actually now very grateful. He remembers Vasudev's words. In text 32, Nanda now is standing over the dead demon. And they start actually doing something which is very human. They start counting their blessings. What tapasya did we perform that, everything worked out well? What worship did we do? What charity did we give? That a child that was actually marked for death has been given back to us. So they actually credit the return of Krishna to their own accumulated piety. It's public wells, they dug roads, etc. And they built roads, they gave charity, everything. And in his commentary, Jiva Goswami quotes the famous verse from the first canto. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshade ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. So the supreme dharma for any human being is that which produces unmotivated, uninterrupted ahetuki apratihata, devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now we see that, Jiva Goswami is actually just quietly is pointing beyond what we read in this verse. Ask that explanation to what is the real cause it is not there while they are pointing to austerity, charity, actually, Jiva Goswami is pointing to something else. He's saying it is the bhakti of the Vrajavasis, not their pious CV, their resume that they have, that Krishna answered to. Krishna responded because of their bhakti, right? But the Vrajavasis are so innocent, they still don't know that. And that's fine, because Krishna doesn't want them to know that, or he doesn't need them to know that. He simply wants their bhakti. And in the next verse, we'll see that now Nanda Maharaj is actually, he's a little stunned. He is now remembering. He is remembering something which was spoken in chapter 5 by Vasudev. When Nanda had actually gone to Mathura to pay the annual taxes to Kamsa, Vasudev says, he says, Nanda, since you have now paid the annual taxes to Kamsa and have also seen me, he says, do not stay in this place for many days. There may be, disturbances in Gokula. So Vasudev said that in passing. Now, somewhere it was filed in, of course, in his memory, Nanda Maharaj's memory, that perhaps this is a caution coming from some friend who's a little bit anxious. But now standing over Trinavarta, dead body, right? And this sentence that he's now remembering of Vasudev is not any ordinary sentence for him. So he becomes more and more astonished. And the verse says, he starts remembering and regurgitating Vasudev's warning over and over again and again. So someone far away in Mathura already knew that something like this is going to happen. So now we'll now not get into, how did Vasudev know that, something bigger is going to be happening, something more is like this is going to be happening. But let's move on now. The scene now shifts back to Yashoda Mata and little Krishna. Krishna is now in Yashoda Mata's arms now. And we recite verse 34. Ekadarbhakam adaya swankam aropya bhamini prasnutam payayam asa stanam steha paripluta. One day Mother Yashoda, having taken Krishna up and placed him on her lap, was feeding him milk from her breast with maternal affection. The milk was flowing from her breast and the child was drinking it. After the storm, and after the demon died, after all the tears, now this is the scene of a mother actually nursing her son. Milk is flowing on its own out of sheer love. Sneha paripluta, submerged in affection. So, and Jiva Goswami in his commentary says that he understands Krishna's inner motive. Says, having just killed a demon who was covered by passion and ignorance, Krishna now resolves to bewilder his own people, not to frighten them again, but this time to pacify Mother Yashoda, who says Jiva had become, and who says Yashoda had become dried up from all the recent fear. So, in the first scene, we saw Krishna was in Mother Yashoda's lap. He was put down. Then the scene shifted to Trinavarta. He was carried off through the sky. And now at the end, he's back in his mother's lap again. Verse 35 and verse 36. Pita prayasya janani sutasya ruchirasmitam mukam lalayati rajan jrimbhato gadrishedam kham rodasi jyotir anikam asha suryenduvahini swasanam budhimscha dvipanagam duhitir duhitri vanani bhutani yani sthirajangamani. O King Parikshit, when the child Krishna was almost finished drinking his mother's milk and Mother Yashoda was touching him and looking at his beautiful, brilliantly smiling face, the baby yawned. And Mother Yashoda saw in his mouth the whole sky, the higher planetary systems, and the earth, the luminaries in all directions, the sun, the moon, fire, air, the seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. So let's visualize this. We're seeing a baby yawning, and his mother is watching his face. The way every mother, will watch the child's face. They're completely lost looking into the child's face. And the child is looking directly into the eyes of the mother. And at that time, his mouth opens. And at that exact instant, inside that mouth, the mother is now seeing everything. It is not a vision, it's not a dream. She's seeing the sky, the moon, every ocean that is there, all the 7 seas, 7 oceans that are there, 7 continents that are there, every island, every mountain, Mount Everest, Alps, all mountains are seen. And the rivers, which Shubhadeva Goswami, he describes the rivers as the daughters of the mountains. So every living thing that moves and every living thing that doesn't move also is seen by Mother Yashoda. And Prabhupada says that actually, Krishna is showing her in a very small form, in a miniature form, mercy, which is the Virat Roop, the universal form. It's the same form that Arjuna, but however, needed Divya Chakshu to see this. He needed the divine eyes to see this and withstand that sight of that Virat Roop on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But for Mother Yashoda, it was different from Arjuna. She didn't need this divine Chakshu, which Arjuna needed to see the universal form. Why was she able to see it when Arjuna was not able to see it without Divya Chakshu? And the Acharyas actually attribute this to her affection. And this affection was despite her not being, kind of an enlightened, coward woman or whatever. She never knew she was raising God, right? But that affection was so strong. So let's go back to that first scene. Again, when I spoke about the eyes, before we go to the last verse of this chapter, Yashoda was unable to bear the weight of her own son. And she looked up towards Vaikuntha and was praying to Narayana to protect that very child on the ground in front of her. She had no idea whom she was addressing, actually. And the Acharyas say that this mouthful of stars and oceans, it confirms one thing, which is that the universe, the entire universe, it rests inside the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because it emerges from Bhagavan. At creation, the lotus of the universe, it emerges from the navel. So the Acharyas say that this also indicates that Krishna is not different from Narayana. So Yashoda Mata, she was offering a prayer to Narayana whom she thought was someone else, and who someone else answered that prayer. But actually, she was addressing that prayer to her own child, whom she was holding. And the acharyas also compare this later. They tie it to. We'll see it in chapter 14 also. When Brahma himself will praise the Lord about this incident also. So the last verse, Savikshya Vishwam Sahasa Rajan Sanjata Vepathu Sammilya Mriksha Vakshi Netre Asitsu Vismita. When Mother Yashoda saw the whole universe within the mouth of a child, her heart began to throb, and in astonishment, she wanted to close her restless eyes. So, Prabhuji and Mataji, if you remember the second scene, right, the whirlwind comes, right? It comes with a roar, a deafening roar, but it also comes and blinds everybody. So the whirlwind stole everybody's power of vision. The word that was used was Mushnam Shachakshum Shi. So the all eyes of all Vraja was stolen by the demon who needed darkness to work in. He wanted to work in his darkness. So that blindness was imposed on all the Vrajavasis by the enemy. In the current situation, when we are seeing Mother Yashoda closes her eyes, she is choosing it herself. And Prabhupada says, he tells us plainly, this is out of maternal love. So she does not appreciate this display of Virat Rupa. She is not thinking, how glorious. I am beholding the supreme absolute truth. She is thinking something closer to fear. She is thinking, oh, what is wrong with my child? Has some disease taken hold of him? Right? And she says, Mrigasha Vakshi. With the startled eyes of a deer cub, of a fawn, she shuts them. Because she doesn't want to see this. And the acharyas go further into what's happening inside her. So they say she's astonished, yes. She's trembling, yes. And she doesn't want this knowledge to be obstructing her affection. In this case, this knowledge of the absolute truth is obstructing affection, and she doesn't want that knowledge to come in between her and Krishna. So they write that she closed her eyes to rid herself of that vision of the universe which obstructed the bliss of seeing the Lord directly as Krishna. To rid herself of the vision of the universe which obstructed the bliss of seeing the Lord directly as Krishna. That universal form is the same form which every yogi is training for many lifetimes together to get a glimpse of. And in this situation, Yashoda Ma has been given that vision, just Krishna yawning. She's been given that vision. Yashoda Ma is seeing that as an obstruction. Something that is standing between her and that someone whom she actually wants, which is not the Lord of the universe. It is the face of her son that she wants to see. So she closes her eyes against Narayana, against Vaikuntha itself, to get back where? To go back to Vrindavan. And Krishna lets her do that. He does not insist that, Yashoda Ma should stay in awe. That moment passes, And Krishna is again back to his normal baby self on Yashoda's ma's lap, smiling. Milk is there still wet on his chin. Right? And this whole cosmos that appeared inside the Lord's mouth has now folded away, as if it never happened at all. Right? So blinded by that demon, everybody closed, including Yashoda Ma, they closed their own eyes. And in the last scene, Yashoda Ma closed her own eyes in love, in her own love. And in between these two closings of eyes, this entire Leela has happened. That brings us to the end of that Leela. So, what do we all do with all of this? Right? We are far from Praja. No whirlwind demon anywhere around us near our door. I was thinking, and I have some reflections. I'll share them. And after that, I'll open up and request all of you also to unmute yourself and share your reflections. The first one goes back to that first scene, that is, Krishna's protection very often does not look like protection. It often looks like inconvenience. We might have a plan and that plan might fall through for no clear reason. We might want to do A, we might want to go to a particular place, to a mall, to a movie, and for whatever reason, that plan might change because of anything without explanation. But we need to remind ourselves that we rarely get to see that demon that didn't reach us because of that. So let's keep that faith in Krishna. And whenever we experience an inconvenience, let's keep that trust that that inconvenience may already be doing its work to get rid of a demon. Number two, the choking of the demon, right? And this is like our mind. So I was thinking about the whirlwind spinning. It's like our mind, our mind is often spinning round and round in arguments, right? Sometimes we are going back in circles, trying to justify ourselves, trying to prove ourselves right. That's exactly like the whirlwind. We get into these intellectual struggles often in our material life. And they never end up clarifying anything. We just keep spinning. So often we procrastinate, and we should not be procrastinating. When it comes to even taking small steps in our spiritual life, we procrastinate that. I still remember when I met His Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj in a home program one day, and I asked him the question, Maharaj, what is the right time we can bring home deities? And Maharaj paused. He looked at me and he said, there is no right time. If that thought has arisen in your mind, that is the right time. Go ahead. This is what Maharaj told me. That was actually the first impetus for me to start thinking, now we need to bring in lordships into the home. And this is exactly this world of Vinanavarta that keeps spinning, right? And we keep procrastinating, we keep delaying so many things, spiritual things, but even material things also. But Krishna is modeling this with his own hands that around that demon's throat. He's saying, stop the noise, act. That is why. Let's stop that noise, let's act. And let's act in the right way. Number three, we'll go to the third scene, and where Prabhupada is now going to tell us, he tells us plainly that about these bogus gurus, right? He says that someone displaying a fragment of power and being mistaken by people who have studied the actual Shastra for God himself is still around us, right? This kind of people are all around us. They show their mystic powers and all that. Let's not get fooled by them. We should not mistake the energy for the energizer. We should not mistake the spark for the fire or for the sun. Let's keep that in mind. We sometimes get overawed when we see these good things in media. Oh, wow. Clap, 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 clap. And it's exactly in those moments we have forgotten Krishna. We should not get overawed by them. And fourth, this is happening right at the end of the Leela. And this is the one that I want you to remember most. So we tend to assume that the highest spiritual experience must be the most overwhelming one. Right? We have a big vision. We need to be in awe. There needs to be more proof. Yashodama had the single most overwhelming vision that anybody can have, any living being can have, which is an entire universe which was laid open in her own son's mouth. She chose to close her eyes against it to keep something smaller and dearer, and that was bhakti. It was not that the vision was false. The vision was real. It was just that her intimacy with Krishna was worth more to her than the knowledge of him. That was what was actually the reason she closed her eyes. So this is a lesson in what actually bhakti wants, what devotion actually wants. We don't want proof. We don't need power. We don't need cosmic vision. It's about having that relationship, that sambandha, that we are eternal servitors. God is always loving us. We are always loving him. So whatever storm is currently blowing through your own life, and whenever a storm comes, of course, it obscures our vision. And it can take something that takes someone away, can take something we love out of our sight. Right? Keep in mind that it's the hands of Krishna that are quietly rearranging, just like he rearranged that courtyard before Trinavarta arrived. He's rearranging our lives also. And before we close, we'll go back just to that verse. I won't recite the verse, but that one portion of the verse I want to just specify the translation, where Nanda Maharaj and the gopis and all that, Rajavasis, they express wonder, right? In front of Trinavarta, when they stood in front of Trinavarta with the laughing Krishna. They say that this is the law of nature. An innocent devotee is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and a sinful person is always vanquished for his sinful life. So Krishna's protection for his devotees is never reactive. It is arranged before the danger fully shows its face. Please keep that in mind. And the deepest vision of God that we can have is not that one that overwhelms the eyes. It is the one where love is strong enough to close its eyes against something that can be so otherwise opulent. So that intimacy for the Lord is not lost to all. Hare Krishna. I'll now open up and request you to please share your comments and anything else that you might have to say. Hare Krishna. Lilananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandot Pranam Prabhu.
Dandavat Pranam.
Sorry, Prabhu, towards the end of the class, somebody came and was talking to that. Dandot Pranam Prabhu. Sorry for the disturbance. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu. Very grateful. Your point about Krishna coming and is always auspicious was the highlight of the class, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anybody else has anything? Otherwise, we can close the class. All have services today, I'm assuming. So can close the class now.
Is Sundar Keshav Prabhu there or he came back home?
He left today morning, Prabhu. So
Okay.
he has left.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Dandavat Prabhu. Thank you.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.